Elvis Presley died today. He was 42. Cause of death? A heart attack. He was found unresponsive at his Graceland estate in Memphis, Tennessee. That was 1977. But in 2025, something else died. The myth. For decades, Elvis wasn't just a singer. He was a symbol, a blueprint of American fame. Fans clung to the rhinestones, the voice, the swagger, to the official Elvis, the one sold through record deals, studio cameras, and carefully managed biographies. But in 2025, a single scientific breakthrough cracked that image wide open. Behind the pompadour and the gospel-infused hits was a lineage that defied every clean, whitewashed story the world had been told. And with one DNA study, the king's crown got heavier, not with scandal, but with truth. Uncomfortable truth. Hidden truth. This is the story of the Elvis Presley you were never supposed to know. The silence, the science, and the identity that couldn't stay buried. Even in death, Elvis never really disappeared. Sure, there were the sightings, the conspiracy theories, the endless impersonators, but behind the pop culture circus was something deeper, a gnawing sense that the official story didn't quite add up. He was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, poor, white, Southern. That's how the legend began. But over the years, questions whispered through fan circles and genealogical forums. Why did some of Elvis's features, his skin tone, his cheekbones, look different? Why did his musical instincts cut across racial lines like few white artists of his time? And why were parts of his family tree conveniently vague? Fans weren't chasing scandal. They were chasing clarity. They wanted to know who Elvis really was. Not the icon, the man. For decades, they were blocked. DNA access was impossible. Legal restrictions were tight. The Presley estate wasn't talking. Until now. In 2025, the wall cracked. Thanks to advancements in genetic sequencing and changes in privacy laws, a group of researchers, including forensic genealogists, university labs, and even private ancestry sites, gained access to verified DNA samples from multiple Presley descendants, particularly from the maternal line. This wasn't internet gossip. This was science. Mitochondrial DNA, autosomal markers, historical cross-referencing, the most comprehensive genetic study of Elvis Presley's lineage was underway. And what they found wasn't just about Elvis. It was about America, the Cherokee legend. For years, fans believed Elvis had Cherokee ancestry through a woman named Mourning Dove White, supposedly his great-great-great-grandmother on his mother's side. The story echoed through Southern folklore, reinforced by family whispers. Even Elvis's mother, Gladys, reportedly believed it. But the DNA said otherwise. Researchers found no genetic markers linking Elvis to any federally recognized Cherokee lineage, no tribal rolls, no records, and ultimately, no Mourning Dove White. Historians weren't shocked. Claims of Cherokee ancestry were common among Southern families, often used to romanticize bloodlines or distance them from more stigmatized heritages. But in Elvis's case, it was a story passed down and polished until it became legend. And now it was just that, legend. The Melungeon theory. Another theory held that Elvis descended from the Melungeons, a mysterious Appalachian group of mixed European, Native American, and African ancestry. Supporters pointed to his olive skin, facial structure, and musical stylings as possible indicators. But again, the DNA didn't hold. No genetic clusters linked him to known Melungeon populations. No ties to surnames, no traceable roots to the core Melungeon communities. In other words, another beautiful story that couldn't survive the microscope. The Jewish ancestry. Here's where it got real. For years, whispers of Elvis's Jewish heritage floated beneath the surface, unconfirmed, unspoken. In 2025, those whispers became fact. Mitochondrial DNA linked Elvis directly to Nancy Burden Tackett, a Jewish woman of Lithuanian descent on his mother's side. Under traditional Jewish law, that made Elvis Jewish by birth. Unlike the earlier theories, this one came with both genetic confirmation and documentation. Elvis never publicly acknowledged this ancestry. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of cultural silence, but those close to him noted he wore both a Christian cross and a Star of David. He owned a Hebrew Bible. He studied mysticism. In mid-20th century America, especially in the South, that identity was inconvenient, so it was buried until 2025. A shock from the past, African ancestry. And then came the revelation that truly stunned the researchers. Hidden deep in his maternal DNA was the unmistakable signature of African ancestry, traced back to a woman likely living in the American South in the early 1800s. Her name is lost, but her legacy remained in the genetic code. The percentage was small, but the impact? Massive. In a country built on racial lines, this discovery complicated everything we thought we knew about Elvis: his look, his sound, his legacy. Did he know? Probably not. But the DNA spoke louder than silence. Here's the continuation and conclusion of the full cinematic rewrite of the Elvis Presley ancestry story. Picking up from the African ancestry revelation, while the maternal line revealed hidden identities, Elvis's paternal roots told a different kind of story, one of violence and survival. Historical records trace the Presley family back to 18th century Ireland, specifically County Wicklow. There, Elvis's fourth great-grandfather, William Presley, appeared in legal documents in 1775 after surviving a brutal assault, beaten, dragged, and left for dead by a mob. Fearing for his life, William fled Ireland with his son, Andrew. Their first stop was New Orleans. Eventually, they settled in Tennessee. This was no glamorous immigration tale. This was forced flight, a man escaping persecution and planting roots in a foreign land. For Elvis, that bloodline meant something, a legacy of survival. A man whose family history was built on escaping violence, poverty, and suppression, and turning that trauma into something larger. Here's the twist nobody saw coming. The DNA discoveries didn't just change how we saw Elvis as a man. They changed how we heard his music. Elvis didn't just sing gospel, blues, country, or rhythm and blues. He fused them, fearlessly, instinctively. For years, critics accused him of appropriation, of borrowing sounds that didn't belong to him. And to a point, they were right. Elvis benefited in ways that black artists of the same era weren't allowed to. That's undeniable. But what if it wasn't just borrowed? What if it was inherited? The Jewish spirituality that shows up in the yearning of his gospel vocals, the African ancestry that echoes in his phrasing, rhythm, and raw emotional depth, the Irish pain threaded through his ballads. Elvis wasn't mimicking culture, he was carrying it. Not all of it consciously, but genetically, spiritually, historically. His voice became a vessel for something bigger, a convergence of hidden stories passed through generations and reborn in Memphis. This doesn't erase the debate about cultural appropriation, but it reframes it. Elvis wasn't just taking, he was part of the very traditions he expressed, and in that expression, he carried the complexity of American identity itself. Despite being one of the most visible men in modern history, Elvis Presley was deeply private, especially when it came to who he was. He wore religious symbols from multiple faiths. He studied mysticism, Christianity, Judaism. He read voraciously. But he never talked about his lineage. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe his mother Gladys didn't know either. Or maybe they knew just enough to keep quiet. In 1950s America, in the segregated South, being a poor white boy with Jewish or African ancestry could derail your entire life, let alone your career. The image of Elvis that was sold to the public was carefully curated. Southern, Christian, wholesome. A white icon for a divided country. Anything else, anything complex, had no place in that picture. So Elvis stayed silent. The 2025 genetic study did more than fill in blanks. It tore off masks, not just for Elvis, but for America. Because this wasn't just a story about one man's heritage. This was a mirror held up to a nation that's always tried to simplify identity, to whiten it, package it, and sell it. Elvis's DNA told the truth, the binary, that history is messy. It can rise from contradiction, not despite it. Elvis Presley was Jewish. He had African ancestry. He descended from Irish immigrants fleeing violence. He grew up poor in a segregated South. He built a sound that didn't fit in any box because he didn't fit in any box. He wasn't just the king of rock and roll, he was a mosaic. So here's the final twist. Elvis Presley didn't steal America's music. He was America's music. Blended, complicated, beautiful, uncomfortable. In a world that still argues over who belongs and who doesn't, his legacy now forces a harder question. What if the most famous man in music was never who we thought he was? What if he was something more, something real? If this changed how you see Elvis, hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your voice too. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories and true history deep dives. Ready for the next twist? Click the video on your screen now. You won't believe what we uncovered next.